Hello, everybody, and welcome back to M&J Games. I'm Michael, and in today's video, we are going to look at how to cheat the Oswald Encounter, so how to use the exploit. But I'm also going to, at the end, then kind of once I show you how to use the exploit, just talk about some tips in general that I have learned over time for the Oswald Counter. Now, as you can see, we're at 100%, and it's not allowing us to place anything because it says the readings are too high, so it suggests moving some objects. It doesn't allow you to do anything with the terrain. It doesn't allow you to actually do anything with the path. So that's the thing we have to remember too is you cannot adjust or do anything with the path once the counter has been reached. And so as you can see in this park, like there's a couple areas that were not as detailed as I wanted it to be. Like I think ultimately this final area over here did not get the detailing that I wanted due to kind of run out of space. So I need to do a better job of not trying to fit too much in the park and being able to, just have everything done. Like that's another thing here was not maybe having some stuff that I would have wanted. But at the end of the day, what I'm going to show you here now is how we can um, use the cheat. So essentially what I have is, let me actually go to a blank park real quick so I can show you what I've saved as a blueprint. So we're here in the grassland, just a blank grassland park, which was the same biome or setting that I have my current park in. Which, gosh, when there's nothing in here, it just looks so small. um, yeah, so if we go over to coasters, more filters, my creations, I have this last one saved as a blueprint. Now, as you can see, even if I'm in a different map, the orientation of everything is still the same. And so sometimes, it's just a matter of getting it set in the right spot. Um, and so as you can see, I have saved, the key is you can save up to 5 rides and up to 4,000 pieces. So here we've got and usually what I try to do is I try to use the longest rides that are going to take up the most on the counter. So we got Heat Wave, we have the wooden coaster over here. Um, oh, I was about to say, I don't think those were there. Yeah, that's just part of those already there in the park. We've got this launch coaster, as you can see. Once I placed it down in the park, afterwards I went ahead and changed the color because I like that kind of bluish coloring more. We got the launch coaster. We got this infinity coaster, which, gosh, I just love how compact it is. Just really, really happy with how that one turned out. And then we've got this stand-up coaster over here. Love how this turnaround looks. It looks really awesome, in my opinion. Um, yeah, super happy with that. And then with the 4,000 pieces, this is some handicap parking that I've created. And then I've got these lockers that were created by Ted, or not Ted, my bad, excuse me. They're created by Tommy P. And then these are also created by Tommy P. And I wanted to kind of add this shop. And so I put in these pieces in here. I mean, that's, you know, the one the one thing is this did take up a lot of the counter using these amount of pieces right here. As you see these pieces right here, just to add the detailing to the shop, right there. That's 1,300 pieces. So that takes up 2%, right? But the key is you can save up to 4,000 pieces. So you don't necessarily need to look at these pieces as wasting percentage. It's just what you can kind of add on at the end, right? So that's what I say, because if you look at the park at 0%, which I think this is the only map that when you actually open it up on a PS5 starts at 0%. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's the case. So at 25%. So this, by doing this cheat right here, I'm able to get an extra 25% into the park. So now let's go back to the park so I can show you kind of the process of actually using this cheat. So now that we're back in the park, we are going to delete everything that I saved as a blueprint, and then we're going to replace it so I can kind of show you the strategy that it takes, because it will be a little weird the first time and it is a little tedious, but I promise that it will make sense. Now, one thing I do want to point out before we do this is I always try with my paths, because you see how even if you have it kind of squared off, um, we can't adjust or do anything with the paths now, and it's not going to have that same square look once you kind of delete this, because of how there's like a automatic connection type thing. And so what I always try to do is give. Oh, that got deleted. How did I just now realize that? Okay, that is that's not good. But yeah. So one thing is there's basically you want to give yourself a little space between here because if not, it's going to be really hard um, to get your pass to automatically connect to the entrance and exit with this coaster being exact. And I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about too. So I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to delete the coasters. And I saved all of this as a blueprint, which is what I highly recommend doing because now I don't have to delete all the different groups that make up the 4,000 pieces. I just delete each of those. And I really meant to add those pieces you can see right there. Um, then let's see, what else do we got? We got this wooden coaster. All right. Now I've deleted everything, but here's the issue too with the Oswald Eugene counter, which this just makes no sense to me. Like it's honestly pisses me off if I'm gonna be honest. Is I've deleted everything that I saved as a blueprint. That's what I placed down here in the park. But as you can see, that that question mark's still up there, and so you got to be very careful when you're dealing with the counter because what's gonna happen is if you go over the counter at all or get to where you can't build anymore, you can't just remove one piece and it's going to put you back under the limit. For some reason, I don't know the exact amount, but let's kind of delete some other stuff to kind of get an idea and see. Um, so let's see. So that's 145. See, even there, let's see. So this is kind of crazy how much it's having us delete just to be able to get back to use the counter. This is so this is an annoying thing with it, but it's good for you guys to kind of see because obviously like it's not. Let's see. All right. So what we're gonna do just for the sake of time is we're going to delete one of these because what I want you guys to see too is that aspect I was just talking about. Okay, so now we're at 100%, right? So let's say let me build out this. Let's take this path for example. And I'm just going to build this out until we get to. Okay, you see how now we hit the counter, right? Well, if I delete that, so it's not letting me build anything. You see how I delete it and it's not letting me build anything again? So you got to be very, very careful what you do with this. And so what I typically tend to do is when I know I'm at 100%, I'm getting close, and usually the meter doesn't hit right at 100%. Um it's about a halfway between 100% and 101% based on what I could tell. Because I think on a PS4, there's about um, if there's about 400 to 450 pieces that takes up a percent if you're talking about placing individual pieces in your park. Whereas on the PS5 or the Xbox One S, I think that's what it's called. It's more in the 600 to 650 range because it's about half. You get about 50% more, and so it's about 200 or 300 pieces that you can place after you get to 100%. But so what I always do is when I think I'm getting close, I save my file so that if I accidentally go over, I can just reopen that file instead of having to delete some stuff. So now what you're going to do is you want to try to get in the same position that you got when you saved the blueprint. And I normally go a little bit higher up just because of having these rides kind of spaced out. And let me see. Sorry, this is taking a little bit. My creations. All right. So now, as you can see, it's not placed properly. And sometimes you might be able to place it pretty darn close. Like this is going to be pretty close to where it's supposed to be, but as you can see, it's still off, right? So that actually auto connected that, which that's not what I was intending to do. But so now what we need to do is we need to click on this, and here's where it gets a little tedious. It's gonna take you, the camera's gonna take you to the center of the coaster. That's just kind of naturally how this camera works in this game. So what you need to do is you need to find a camera angle where you can clearly um, see where you're at. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to find. So what I'm going to do is a couple different things. First off, I'm going to try to lower this until it gets to roughly the height I'm looking for. And so then I'm going to place it down. And that might not be the exact same height. So now what I need to do is I need to actually delete these paths. Okay. Yep, so we delete those paths. So now do the same thing. Except now I'm going to try to get the one of the sides. So for example, I'm going to now go this way until it looks like it's pretty close. So that looks pretty good, right? And so sometimes it might be just a little bit off. And actually trying to look at the height as well. So then I just place it there. So this one actually worked out almost perfect. Let's see. Yeah, so that's basically perfect. So that was actually really easy to place that one right there. And so you can see kind of like it looks like it was been there the whole time that we didn't use this trick. So let's move on to the next one because I want us to kind of see the different ways. And so once again, it's somehow connected these paths. Um, so let's actually move this out of the way a little bit. So that might have actually not been the best way to approach it. Um, because then if it connects the paths like that, it can kind of create some awkward um, some awkward look at your paths right there. There we go. So you just got to delete one of them. And so now, same thing as before, but you see how it takes us to the center of where the coaster's at. And now, this one's a little bit different because of how I've got it set up. But as you can see, it's going a little bit to the left, right? So now I need to shift it this way a little bit. And so that looks basically in line with how the paths are. Like it's pretty straight. But as we can see, the height's not quite there because you can see it's got a little bit of a dip to it. And this is where it can really get tricky is you just want to kind of barely um, inch it up and down, if that makes sense. But here's also the issue. This is extended out the back. We also have the issue here where you see how it's still higher than it needs to be. So a couple things I need to do. First thing, I'm going to extend it this way. Like I said, this is just tedious. It takes a little bit, but I promise you, it's totally worth it in the long run to have the extra percentage space. So let's see if that's yep. So that's still so. Like I said, it's just hard sometimes to find the proper camera angle. If you've got a more compact coaster, it works a little bit better because of um, the way that the coasters are set up. Now, another way you can try to tell is, so look here, is looking at the rails kind of on this spot. Now, another mistake here is that so you see how I went a little bit too far, but then I also need to move this down a little bit. So let's look at this again. So as I've said multiple times already, this is tricky. Um, we will get it exact, but sometimes certain coasters can take a little bit longer than others when trying to replace them like this. And so now basically what I need to do is I need to try to inch it down. There we go. So that looks a little bit better, doesn't it? So now what we have, and it's still not perfect. I need to probably move it over slightly. But one thing you could do is you could actually, so let's say we were to delete this. You could then select these objects right here, and you could actually shift them over if you needed to. So that works as well. But now you can see that wood's kind of sticking through, right? Um, but just trying to give you some options and show you kind of how you can kind of work with the system that's been given in this game and so forth. And so that's just kind of me. I'm not going to go through all 5 of these coasters with you because you get the idea. It gets really tedious sometimes and really annoying, but I've done this now for 2 to 3 parks, so it's kind of, and not to mention in this park, basically what I did was, so I saved the 5 coasters as a blueprint. I didn't actually have this one built yet. I saved this coaster as part of the blueprint. And I actually don't delete the coasters all at once. I would continue building. So like I think I was at one point I was finishing up building in this area. So when I got to 100% the first time, I deleted all this stuff from over here. And then I kept building. And then I started building over here. When I got to 100%, I deleted this coaster here, kept building this area, got to 100%, then I deleted this coaster, right? Built over here and so forth. And then when I got to the end here, because I knew that with this being a dive coaster, it doesn't give me that much of a percentage compared to this one, just because it's kind of a shorter ride and the track links are built with longer pieces. I then built this coaster, and built the station and then kind of deleted it. And so it's kind of, you kind of delete in pieces instead of all at the same time, kind of when you need it. So now I'm going to open up a blank map and I want to go over a couple things that I've learned with you guys about the Oswald system. All right, so first things, we're going to look at a couple different coaster types, and we're going to start with the hybrid coaster. So it doesn't matter which one. We'll start with this one right here. All right. So a couple things. We're just going to build up to. So this is the longest piece of track we can build. All right. So when we go to the end here, that roughly took up 2%, right? And so I mean that's a lot if you think about it that way. So now let's see. Build another hybrid, same. Is that the same? No, it's a different one. Malice Unchained, there we go. Alright, so now let's build using the shortest pieces. Okay, so now we're just a little bit over 2%. So basically it took 2% with that other one. So you see the difference here? The longer the pieces are, the more you can build with it. So to build the same amount of track length, we went from 0% to 2% here. So it's roughly about 2%, give or take a little bit based on the measurements. This one went from 2% to 7%. So I mean, it just adds, like, I understand 4-meter method, all this different stuff, but it just adds so much to the coaster, like to the counter, right? Which is why it's hard to. All right, so let's keep it right here. So I want to keep it exactly at 8. So there we go. We got the hybrid coaster track with a lot of supports. So kind of keep that in mind. And Ace Maverick did something like this on his channel about a year ago, kind of going over the different coaster types too. But let's just take a B&M now. So let's take your Hyper, for example, or B&M Hyper Coaster, okay? So we're going to do the same thing we just did. So we're at 8% right now. Longest piece of coaster track possible. I mean, that's not even 2%. Trying to. The reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to get to where we're at 2%, because I don't want us to start on. Let's see. Let's do it this way. All right, so here's what we'll do this way. We'll go till we got to 9%. So basically, right here, right, you can span almost half the length of the track using 1%. And now remember, everything you see here, this is on a PS5, right? So when you're looking at it on the PS4, take away a third of it. So if this took, or sorry, add well, I can't think now. So if this took 1 meter or like 1%, this would have taken 1.5. So add a half of what you have here. So like this one that took 2 that we started would have taken 3. This one that took 5 would have taken 7.5. Because that's kind of how the percentages work out if you do the math behind it. Now, here, if we do the shortest track length, and this is going to be the only other coaster we look at with this, but I believe it's going to be less than the hybrid coaster. Maybe not a ton, but it's still going to be less. So now we're at 3%, 4%. Okay, maybe not. It was right around, basically around the same amount as this hybrid coaster. So I was a little bit off on that aspect of it. But yeah, so the key is the longer the coaster track, the more percentage encounter you can get. And so that's why when I released a video a little bit ago about smoothing out coasters, I try as much as possible to use longer coaster track. It's not always able to do that because then some of the elements obviously are not great, especially when you're trying to create your own custom inversions. But the longer the coaster track, the better. Now let's look at actual pathing. Okay. So let's take this basic 3 meter, 4 meter path, and I don't really care what type of path you use, whatever. So we're just going to go till we get to 1%. All right, so we're 1% right there. Now, let's create the same on a grid, okay? This is why my cues are very boring with how I create them. Because I tried as much as possible to create paths that are on a grid system. Because the grid, look how much further you can get out of your percentage by using a grid. I mean, this is honestly insane. And that's why as much as possible, even not even just the cues, just in general, I just try to create a grid. And we're going to look at the widest paths in a second too. And for anybody who's watching this, I appreciate you guys sticking around. And I hope this, for some of you who maybe didn't realize some of this, I hope this is helpful. I mean, I'm even surprised by this. Holy smokes. Did I miss a percentage or something? Oh, this is crazy. Man, at some point we're going to get to 16%. Some point. There we go. So there we're at almost. So I mean that's using the simplest path too. Look at the difference. Like this is, hold on, this I just don't even believe this. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't realize it was this much. Let's see, something had to, actually that's not going to help. So we'll test it with yeah. So now let's look at this. Let's get this better lighting. So now let's look at it with, and I've got it on feet. So let's look at it with the widest width. Okay. And usually I like using this gravel path. I also like using just the asphalt path. So remember, we're on 16, right? Yeah, so look at that, the length you can get with that compared to this one. Now, I didn't quite have it parallel, but this is easily 4 to 5 times as many pieces, right? So now let's do it on a grid again. And this is probably going to take a little bit, so yeah, so you're able to get 2.5 times more maybe, in terms of the amount of usage in one percentage of. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. I'm skipping over my words right now. But the last one I want to look at here with pathing is the queue lines. Okay. All right. So there's the queue line. So something had to happen here a little bit before because that shouldn't be that short compared to this. Maybe we weren't quite at the starting point because it should be a little bit further out. And I can test that again at the end just to be sure. Um, but then same thing. If you're to do this with on a grid system, it's going to give you a lot more bang for your buck. But the key is, oh, actually, you know what? And then some people like doing the 2 meter queues, which just kill your counter. So really, I mean, it's up to you when creating a counter, doing the counter and stuff like that, and kind of trying to figure out what works best for what you're trying to build. But you just got to remember the wider your pathing, the more that just in general that it's gonna yeah. So let's look at this one again. Okay, so it's really about right there. Yeah, so that needed to be somehow we got messed up on the percentage there. But either way, I mean, this is still 2.5 times of the amount. So that's about what I've kind of come up with is that every the smallest size path you only get about 1/5 of the amount that you would um than with the than if that part's on a grid. And so just keep that in mind, guys, as y'all are kind of building parks and stuff. It's all up to you on how you want to build it, but ultimately it comes down to like how big do you want your park to be? How do you want stuff to look? Because if you're having all these long queues that are weaving and zigzagging in and out, I mean that's gonna kill your counter. Like look how short that is. Look at that. I mean that's barely a queue at all, right? And that is 1% on the PS5, which means 1.5% on the PS4. So keep that in mind, guys. I know caliper queues aren't great, but in my opinion, in this video game, they're fine because it allows you to build more. So it's all about like how you want to play. And so these are just some tips and tricks that I've kind of learned as I've been playing the game. And I just kind of wanted to share with you guys as a part of this cheat video. Um, and so if anybody else has any others, I would love to hear them. Love for your input. And thank you guys so much once again for all the great that you guys do in the community and just constantly supporting Jasmine and I and all the other Planko creators. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.